I still remember the sound of their laughter, sharp, cruel, and echoing through the cold hallway as if it were a weapon designed to pierce straight into my soul. It was the kind of laugh that didn't just mock you, it stripped away every ounce of dignity you thought you had left. That night, I stood in the doorway of what used to be our home, clutching an old duffel bag stuffed with clothes I hadn't even been allowed to fold properly. My hands trembled, not from fear but from anger, though I couldn't let them see that.
Not then.
"You're worthless without our son," my mother-in-law spat, her voice dripping with venom. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her perfectly manicured nails gleaming under the harsh, overhead light. Her husband stood beside her, smirking like this was some twisted game they'd won. Their eyes burned into me, daring me to fight back, to prove them wrong. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I stared at the floor, letting the weight of their words sink in while silently vowing never to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. The air smelled faintly of lavender candles and expensive cologne, a scent I once associated with warmth and family, but now it felt suffocating, like a noose tightening around my neck. I took one last glance behind me, at the house where I'd spent years building memories only to have them torn apart piece by piece. Every corner whispered betrayal. The dining table where we shared meals, the couch where we laughed over bad TV shows, the bedroom where dreams turned into nightmares. And here I was, being thrown out like yesterday's trash, reduced to nothing more than a shadow of who I used to be. As I stepped onto the porch, the biting wind slapped against my face, forcing tears from my eyes, or maybe those tears came from somewhere deeper, darker. Either way, I refused to wipe them away. Let them think whatever they wanted about me. Let them believe their lies. Because deep down, beneath all the humiliation and rage, something inside me stirred. Something dangerous. Something they would regret awakening. Walking away from that house wasn't easy. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of the bag on my shoulder, but because of the storm brewing inside me. The echoes of their laughter followed me like ghosts, haunting every breath I took. But instead of breaking me, those cruel words ignited a fire within, a burning determination to rise above everything they thought I was capable of. As I trudged down the empty street, lit only by the dim glow of flickering streetlights, I made a silent promise to myself. I wouldn't just survive this. I would thrive. I would show them exactly who I am when pushed to the edge. That night, sitting alone in a cramped motel room with peeling wallpaper and the faint hum of a broken heater, I began to rebuild. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos, pictures of happier times before bitterness poisoned everything. There was one photo in particular that caught my eye, a candid shot of me standing confidently in front of a podium at work, mid-presentation, surrounded by colleagues nodding approvingly. In that moment, I remembered something crucial. I had always been someone worth admiring, long before I ever walked into their lives. They didn't define me. Their opinions didn't shape me. And suddenly, clarity struck like lightning. I wasn't going to waste another second mourning what I'd lost. This was my chance to rediscover who I truly was. The next morning, I woke up early, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and caffeine from the cheap coffee machine in the motel lobby. I called my best friend, Sarah, whose voice instantly grounded me. "You deserve so much better than them," she said firmly after I told her what happened. Her unwavering support gave me strength, reminding me that there were still people in my life who believed in me. With renewed resolve, I drafted a plan. First, I updated my resume, highlighting skills I hadn't tapped into for years. Then, I reached out to former mentors and colleagues, reconnecting with networks I'd let slip away during my marriage. Every email sent, every call made, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But transformation isn't just external, it's internal too. I started journaling again, pouring my raw emotions onto paper until the pages were soaked with ink and tears. Writing became my therapy, helping me process the pain while also envisioning the future I wanted to create. I wrote letters to my ex-husband and his parents, letters I never intended to send, pouring out every ounce of hurt, frustration, and defiance. Those words weren't meant for them, they were for me. They helped me release the anger that threatened to consume me and channel it into something productive. By the end of the first week, I landed a temporary gig organizing events for a local nonprofit. It wasn't glamorous or high-paying, but it reignited a passion I'd forgotten I had, bringing people together. The thrill of coordinating details, solving problems on the fly, and watching strangers connect over shared experiences reminded me how powerful I could be when I put my mind to something. Slowly but surely, I stopped seeing myself as a victim and started embracing the idea that I was becoming unstoppable. And yet, amidst all this growth, a seed of vengeance planted itself deep within me. It wasn't born out of hatred, but out of justice, an unshakable need to prove them wrong. To make them see that their cruelty hadn't broken me, it had forged me into someone stronger, sharper, and far more formidable than they could have imagined. I didn't know exactly how or when it would happen, but I knew one thing for certain. The day they realized their mistake would come. And when it did, they wouldn't just see me. They'd feel the full force of everything they underestimated. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when the envelope arrived, its edges embossed with gold lettering that glimmered under the fading sunlight streaming through my tiny apartment window. At first glance, it seemed innocuous enough. A formal invitation slipped between utility bills and junk mail. But as I tore it open, my heart skipped a beat. The gala was being hosted by none other than the prestigious Hartwell Foundation, an organization known for championing innovation and leadership across industries. The event promised to be a glittering affair attended by CEOs, philanthropists, and influencers, the kind of crowd I hadn't dared dream of mingling with just months ago. Yet there it was, addressed directly to me. Ms. Evelyn Carter, special guest. For a moment, I froze, staring at the card as if it might vanish if I blinked.
How had they found me? Who had nominated me?
Questions swirled in my mind, but beneath the shock lay a flicker of excitement, and something darker, sharper. A realization dawned on me almost immediately. This wasn't just any opportunity. This was fate handing me the perfect stage. If there was ever a place to confront my past head-on, to rewrite the narrative they had tried so desperately to impose on me, this was it. My pulse quickened as I envisioned walking into that grand ballroom, dressed impeccably, radiating confidence, and watching their faces crumble when they saw me standing tall among the elite. The planning began that very evening. I scoured online boutiques for the perfect gown, settling on a sleek black number with intricate embroidery that shimmered subtly under the light. It wasn't flashy, it was elegant, commanding respect without begging for attention. Next came the accessories. Diamond studs borrowed from Sarah, her insistence, a sleek clutch, and heels that clicked with authority against the hardwood floors of my apartment as I practiced walking in them. Every detail mattered. This wasn't just about looking good. It was about embodying the person I had become, the woman they had dismissed as worthless. As the days ticked closer to the gala, anticipation coiled tightly in my chest. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would carry myself, imagining their stunned expressions when they realized who I was now. Would they recognize me right away? Or would they dismiss me initially, only to choke on their own arrogance later? Either way, I knew I wouldn't let them off easily. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It was closure. Closure for every tear shed, every insult endured, every ounce of self-doubt they had forced upon me. And as I zipped up the garment bag containing my dress the night before the event, I allowed myself a small smile. Tomorrow, I would step into that room not as the girl they threw out, but as someone entirely new. Someone unforgettable. The grand ballroom was alive with energy, a dazzling sea of sequins, tuxedos, and champagne flutes clinking softly in celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast cascading light over the polished marble floors, reflecting off the golden accents of the venue's ornate architecture. Guests mingled effortlessly, their laughter blending with the soft strains of a string quartet playing in the background. The air buzzed with the kind of opulence that screamed exclusivity, and for a moment, I felt like an outsider peeking into a world I didn't belong to. But then I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and reminded myself why I was here. This wasn't their world anymore. It was mine now. I moved through the crowd with purpose, each step deliberate, my heels clicking confidently against the floor. Conversations paused briefly as heads turned to take me in, some curious, others appreciative. I nodded politely, exchanged pleasantries, but kept scanning the room. And then I saw them. My ex-husband, his parents, standing near the bar, glasses of wine in hand, laughing as though they owned the place. For a split second, my stomach clenched, old insecurities threatening to surface. But I swallowed hard, steadying myself. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. Their backs were to me as I approached, oblivious to my presence. I could hear snippets of their conversation. My mother-in-law boasting about some charity gala they'd recently attended, my father-in-law chiming in with a joke that made them all chuckle. My ex stood slightly apart, scrolling idly on his phone, disinterested in the banter. None of them noticed me until I cleared my throat softly, just loud enough to draw their attention. One by one, their heads turned and their smiles faltered. At first, recognition didn't register. They looked at me blankly, trying to place the poised woman standing before them. Then my mother-in-law's mouth dropped open, her glass of wine trembling slightly in her hand. "Evelyn," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the crowd. Her husband stiffened beside her, his jaw tightening as he stared at me, clearly struggling to reconcile the image of the woman they'd discarded with the one standing in front of them now. My ex finally looked up from his phone, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Hello," I said smoothly, my tone cool and measured. "Fancy seeing you here." The words hung in the air, sharp and loaded, slicing through the pretense of civility. My mother-in-law recovered first, though her composure was visibly shaken. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice laced with both disdain and unease. It was the same condescending tone she'd used when throwing me out, but this time, it lacked its usual bite. I smiled faintly, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. "I'm the keynote speaker tonight," I replied, relishing the way their faces paled simultaneously. Apparently, the Hartwell Foundation thinks my work is worth celebrating. Imagine that. My father-in-law sputtered something unintelligible, while my ex muttered under his breath, "This can't be real." But it was my mother-in-law who broke first, her carefully constructed mask crumbling as reality hit her like a freight train. You can't be serious," she exclaimed, her voice rising despite herself. Heads turned in our direction, curious whispers rippling through the crowd. "Do you have any idea how ridiculous you look right now?" she snapped, attempting to regain control. "You think dressing up and pretending to be someone important changes anything?" "Oh, it changes everything," I countered, my voice steady and cutting. "Because, unlike you, I don't need validation from anyone else to know my worth. You three spent years tearing me down, convincing me I was nothing without your son, your approval, your money. But look around you." I gestured to the room, to the dozens of people who had begun to notice the escalating confrontation. These people don't care about your name or your status. They care about results, about impact. And guess what? I've got plenty of both. My ex stepped forward, his expression a mixture of guilt and defensiveness. "Evelyn, come on. This isn't necessary," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. "We were wrong, okay? Can't we just move past this?" "Move past it," I echoed, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No, sweetheart, we can't. Because moving past it means forgetting what you did. Forgetting how you treated me like I was disposable. And I don't forget things like that." I turned back to his parents, my gaze piercing. "You laughed at me that night, told me I was worthless. Do you remember that? Well, here's the thing, you were wrong. Dead wrong. And tonight, everyone here will see exactly why." Before they could respond, the MC's voice boomed over the speakers, announcing the start of the program. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our esteemed guest speaker, Evelyn Carter." Applause erupted throughout the ballroom, and all eyes turned to me. I gave my former in-laws one last, triumphant look before stepping toward the stage, leaving them standing there, speechless and exposed. As I ascended the steps, I felt lighter, freer, as if the weight of their judgment had finally been lifted. Tonight wasn't about them anymore.
It was about me.
And I was ready to shine. The spotlight bathed me in its warm glow as I stood at the podium, gripping the edges tightly to steady myself. The room fell silent, save for the faint rustling of fabric as guests settled into their seats. Hundreds of eyes locked onto me, expectant, curious. My heart pounded in my chest, but I refused to let nerves get the better of me. This was my moment, not just to speak, but to reclaim my power, to rewrite the story they had tried to dictate. Taking a deep breath, I began. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying effortlessly across the vast ballroom. When I received the invitation to speak here tonight, I'll admit, I hesitated. Not because I doubted my ability to contribute meaningfully to this incredible gathering, but because of the journey that brought me to this stage. It's a journey marked by failure, resilience, and ultimately, triumph, a journey many of us share, whether we realize it or not. I paused, scanning the audience, letting my gaze linger briefly on the corner where my ex and his parents sat frozen, their faces pale and unreadable. Tonight, I want to talk about worth, not the kind society assigns based on titles, wealth, or relationships, but the intrinsic value we often forget exists within ourselves. Too often, we allow others to define us, to tell us who we are and what we're capable of achieving. I know this firsthand because for years I let people do exactly that. People who claimed to love me, who swore they had my best interests at heart, yet treated me as though I were nothing without them. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and I pressed on, my voice growing firmer, more impassioned. There came a point when I believed those lies. When I doubted my abilities, my dreams, even my right to exist independently. But here's the truth. No one gets to decide your worth except you. No matter how many times someone tells you otherwise, no matter how loudly they shout it or how cruelly they enforce it, their words hold no power unless you give it to them. And trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way. I glanced again at my ex and his parents, who were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats, their discomfort palpable. Some of you may know what it feels like to be dismissed, belittled, or outright discarded by those who should have supported you. Maybe you've been told you're not smart enough, talented enough, or brave enough. Maybe you've been made to feel invisible, insignificant. But let me tell you something, those moments don't define you. What defines you is how you rise after falling. How you rebuild yourself when the world tries to tear you down. That's where true strength lies. The room was utterly silent now, every ear tuned to my words. Even the servers paused mid-step, trays balanced precariously in their hands. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my tone to something softer, more intimate. Rebuilding isn't easy. It requires confronting pain, dismantling doubt, and rediscovering the parts of yourself you thought were lost forever. For me, it meant reconnecting with passions I'd abandoned, seeking out communities that uplifted rather than undermined, and learning to trust my own instincts again. It meant proving, to myself, first and foremost, that I am more than the sum of anyone else's expectations. I straightened, my voice rising once more, resonating with conviction. And so, tonight, I stand before you not as a victim of circumstance, but as proof that resilience can transform devastation into opportunity. That rejection can fuel reinvention. That the very people who sought to diminish you can inadvertently inspire you to become unstoppable. Because here's the irony. The same individuals who laughed at me, who called me worthless, unknowingly set me on the path to discovering my true potential. They handed me the greatest gift of all, the chance to prove them wrong. Applause erupted before I could finish, spontaneous and thunderous, filling the room with waves of energy. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, smiling genuinely for the first time in what felt like ages. As I stepped back from the podium, I caught sight of my ex and his parents again. Their expressions were a mix of shock, shame, and something else, perhaps regret. Whatever it was, it didn't matter anymore. I had said everything I needed to say. The rest was up to them. As the applause faded into a gentle hum of admiration, I descended the stage, my heart swelling with a profound sense of liberation. The encounter with my ex and his parents had unraveled threads of my past, but it was the aftermath that wove them into a tapestry of redemption. That night, amidst the glittering lights and the murmurs of impressed attendees, I felt a seismic shift within me. It wasn't just the vindication of proving them wrong, it was the realization that their opinion had shaped a part of me that I had outgrown. In the weeks that followed, the dynamics shifted unexpectedly. My ex reached out, his messages laced with a humility I hadn't anticipated. He spoke of regret, of understanding too late the gravity of his family's actions. While forgiveness didn't come easily, I acknowledged his effort to bridge the chasm his neglect had created. We met once, under the neutral skies of a quiet cafe, where words flowed cautiously between us. It was not a reconciliation, but a closure, a mutual agreement to part ways with respect, acknowledging the lessons learned. With his parents, however, resolution took a different form. They never directly apologized, but their absence from my life spoke volumes. The gala had stripped them of their facade, exposing the fragility of their pride. In their silence, I found peace, a space where their voices no longer dictated my self-worth. Their withdrawal was a testament to the power of standing firm in one's truth, a lesson etched deeply into my soul. Reflecting on this journey, I recognized the dual nature of adversity. It wounds, yes, but it also fortifies. Each challenge faced was a brick in the fortress of my character, teaching me resilience and self-reliance. The gala wasn't merely an event. It was a milestone marking my evolution from a woman defined by others' perceptions to one who thrived on her own terms. Now, as I navigate my path forward, I carry these lessons with grace and gratitude. The sting of past hurts is dulled, replaced by the warmth of personal victories and newfound strengths. Life post-gala is a canvas of possibilities, painted with bold strokes of independence and vibrant hues of self-discovery. I am not just surviving, I am flourishing, crafting a future where my worth is non-negotiable and my spirit indomitable. Thus, the saga of my confrontation with my in-laws culminates not in vengeance, but in empowerment. It is a narrative of overcoming, of emerging not unscathed, but undefeated. Herein lies the essence of my journey, a testament to the transformative power of facing one's demons and emerging victorious, not just in the eyes of others, but most importantly, in one's own.